All right, well, welcome everyone. I hope all of you had a great holiday season, and we're able to spend time with family and friends and just enjoy the time. So today we are going to talk about potential suspension requests, job search, and relocation. We didn't have time to cover potential suspension requests in the previous training, so I just tagged it onto this one. So it may or may not take the full 2 hours today, so I'm sure you'll be happy with that if you don't have to listen to me for 2 hours. But we will get started with this. So when there's potential suspension requests, it's an Illinois thing that we have. It's just because there are specific requirements that the participants must, they qualify for them, and they have to maintain that throughout their whole training plan in order for them to keep those TRA benefits that they're getting. And if they are non-compliant with any of those requirements, then it could cause a revocation or suspension of their UI or their TRA benefits. And that's why we have the potential suspension request. And that's what we require the career planner to do, is basically those are recording non-compliance within the IWDS system is what a potential suspension request is. IDES is the agency that is responsible for making a determination on whether or not that potential suspension request is justifiable or non-justifiable cause. And they will make an adjudication and a determination of that, and they will make a ruling on it. And there's some steps that you need to follow, which we'll cover later when that happens. So basically, a potential suspension request, or we call them PSRs, it's processed and it notifies the participant and IDES of any potential ineligibility of UI or TRA benefits or trade services that they're receiving. And there is a letter that we have developed. It is the trade potential suspension letter, which is trade form 003C, and we call it the potential suspension letter. And we'll cover that later. I will bring that up when you can look at it. And as always, the participant does have appeal rights if we do a potential suspension request, and those appeal rights are on this particular letter. So here are the conditions that will cause a suspension of benefits, potentially. If the participant was issued I spelled waiver wrong, a waiver from training, and they refused suitable employment. So if you have a participant, you've issued a waiver to them, and you find out that for some reason they have refused suitable employment, then you will need to enter a potential suspension request for that person, and the waiver will be revoked at that point as well. If you have a participant who enrolled in training, but for some reason they failed to start that training when they were supposed to, there's various reasons why that can happen. These actually here are basically what the potential suspension reasons are in our system as well. You'll see that they kind of match up to the choices that you can make on those statuses. If a participant is in training and they cease participation, they drop below full time, or they potentially have quit their training, that's another reason for a potential suspension request. Or there is one that would be discovered probably during a monitoring type of thing or some sort of a review. If the participant didn't meet one of the qualifying requirements for eligibility in either a trade or a TRA program. I don't know that we've seen any of those, but it could potentially happen. Participant is non-compliant with trade requirements, and this would include any kind of alleged fraud on the part of the participant, or the participant failed to meet required training benchmarks and completion TRA is in jeopardy. And in order for this one to be used, they would have to fail 2 consecutive benchmarks. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to go over each of these different reasons and some of the things that will happen. for each of those. So if you have a participant that was issued a waiver from training and they refused suitable employment, this is what the regulations state: except when enrolled or participating in trade approved training, a participant cannot refuse an offer of suitable employment. Suitable employment is defined in 20 CFR 618.110 as work of a substantially equal or higher skill level than the worker's past adversely affected employment, and wages for such work that are not less than 80% of the worker's average weekly wage. And part-time, temporary, short-term, and threatened employment is not considered suitable employment. If it is determined a participant refused suitable employment, then a PSR must be entered by the career planner, and you would complete and mail to the participant the potential suspension letter. And there are specific, you can mark the specific reason on the letter, and you need to case note the mailing of the letter. And you would select refuse suitable employment from the drop-down box for the reason on that potential suspension request status. We'll go through all of this and how to enter these potential suspension requests later. I have the instructional documents that I prepared for all the other things as well. So it'll look very familiar. If you have a participant enrolled in training and they failed to start, so a participant is deemed to have failed to begin participation in an approved training program when they fail to attend one or more scheduled training classes and other training activities in the first week of the approved training program without justifiable cause. Now, justifiable cause is if the participant acted diligently, but they were unable to complete in a timely manner that task that they were supposed to due to exigent circumstances. I know it's a big mouthy words, all these words in here, but just know that if they acted diligently and it was something that was just no fault of their own for whatever reason, there can be exceptions made for things. Here's some reasons that a participant may fail to start a training program as they originally were scheduled. We've had training institutions cancel the program or classes at the last minute. There's a change in the program start date. We have had those as well. And there could be some personal reasons, medical reasons, family issues, financial reasons, whatever, just some personal reason for that participant and they couldn't begin that training. Does require the entry of a PSR and IWDS, and that you would select the enrolled in training failed to start reason for the PSR. If they're in training and they cease participation, and cease participation can either be they've dropped below full time or they have potentially quit or something like that. And this is from the regs as well. A participant is deemed to have ceased participation in approved training program when they fail to attend all scheduled training classes or other training activities scheduled in any week of the approved training program, drops below full-time, or quits training with or without justifiable cause. And we have the justifiable cause thing again as well. These just want to note that the full-time requirement does not apply to 2021R participants. Those are the ones served under petitions 98,000 plus because they are potentially eligible for TRA payments while attending part-time training. So that is something to keep in mind when you're working with participants. If it is someone served by 98,000 plus petition, they do not have to meet that full-time requirement. So when a participant fails to submit 2 consecutive biweekly attendance sheets, the career planner might not know or might not be able to determine at that point if that participant has actually ceased participation or that they have quit training. So if that occurs, then you would of course have your ceased participations entered for the biweekly attendance that are missed. But if you do have 2 of them in a row, then a PSR should be entered in the system by the career planner. And, like I said here, there should already be 2 ceased participation status records already entered for that participant as well. For participants that are in their last semester of training, they can attend part-time and still be eligible for TRA and HCTC benefits, only if we have documentation from that training institution that indicates that participant only has these remaining classes to finish their certificate or degree, and they will earn that at the completion of this semester and those courses that they're taking. Another note about 2021R participants, they are eligible to attend that part-time training and still be eligible for TRA and HCTC benefits. So that would not apply in the last semester for those participants, but anybody else, it does if they're in their last semester. But that is the only time when we can allow the part-time training for participants who are in any other program besides 2021R and still receive their TRA and the HCTC benefits. If the participant does quit training and IWDS deems it's justified, then that participant could potentially come back later to resume that training plan. Has to be the same exact training plan, and they still have to meet the requirements for completing it within the allowable training weeks that are left after when they come back, because they will have used up some of the training weeks prior to that. So it still has to meet that 130 weeks. So if you have one of those, of course, you're going to complete and mail the letter to them, enter the PSR. You're going to pick the in training, cease participation, drop below full-time or quit reason. Now, if you have a participant and they come to you and they say, you know, I'm quitting training for whatever reason, you know for a fact they are quitting training. They've told you they're quitting training. You have definite certainty that they have quit, then you do not have to enter a PSR at that point. You will just end their training at that point and through the modification process, and that will actually send the status information to IWDS that they will need to stop payment of the TRA. So if the participant did not meet one of the qualifying requirements for eligibility in a trade TRA program, like I said, this may be discovered during monitoring or, you know, some other method. It's kind of they're very unique situations that could come up. Some of them are like if the participant potentially was not part of the actual certified worker group, they did not have a qualifying separation. See, a lot of these things will already be known when you're doing the eligibility for the participant. So I've not seen one of these, but it could potentially happen. So we have it as a part of our thing. They missed their 2626 or 816 deadline. The training program was not trade approvable. Another one, the one that you will see the most often used for this one right here is the failure to make contact for their 30-day waiver review. These other ones should already be determined, but something could happen that, you know, someone made a mistake and they were not, you know, eligible under these. But if they do fail to make the contact for the 30-day waiver review, that's the one you will use for, this is the reason you'll use, and that's the most common one you'll see. Of course, it requires the PSR entry in the system, the letter, and then of course, here's the reason, the failure to meet qualifying requirements for TRA, TAA. Non-compliant with trade requirements is another reason. You will select this reason if none of the other reasons apply, or if the participant is alleged to have committed fraud. That would be the reason you would pick this one. Again, you always have to mail this letter, case note the mailing of the letter. You know, you'll do the same thing, the entry of the PSR in the system. And then the one about the benchmarks not met, no completion TRA. This is when the participant has failed 2 benchmarks, consecutive benchmarks, and the training plan cannot be modified. That's when you would enter this type of PSR in the system. And what will happen is that prior to paying any completion TRA, once, you know, like you get that participant and they come up onto the point of training and they're going to need to apply for completion TRA, they'll apply for completion TRA. IWDS will look at this, and if you know, they'll confirm with the career planner and that the benchmarks are accurate and correct at the time that completion TRA applications are submitted, and they will make that determination as to whether or not that participant will get paid that TRA or not. So, but if they do fail 2 benchmarks, then, you know, you should put this reason in, because that does send a notice to IWDS that they are not complying with the requirements for the program. And like we said down here, they will not adjudicate this particular issue until that participant has exhausted additional TRA and they submit a completion TRA application. So again, complete the letter, send it, case note it, and then there's the reason. You select the benchmarks not met, no completion TRA as the reason. So IDS does adjudicate the PSRs. Career planners must follow up with IDES to finalize that PSR, to close it out, and to get that final determinations or ruling that IDES has made on that. And we do have instructions on the process for each type of PSR. On the PSR instructions documents that I've prepared, I walk through the whole process, how to do each particular type, because there are some different things to do based on what IDES's adjudication determination is. So let's go to the, we'll do one topic at a time. Let's go over to the PSR information, and we can cover that. Let me show you the letter. So this is the trade potential suspension letter. Of course, date, participant name, their address. So it says, it has been determined that you have not met all eligibility requirements to qualify for and maintain benefits in the trade TRA program. So what you would do is this, it says this letter serves as notification that IDES will investigate your eligibility for the benefits due to the following reason. So the first one is the participant provided a waiver from training and refused suitable employment. Participant enrolled in training but failed to start. So you see all of those reasons that we have actually covered. When you get to the training benchmarks one, there are two options. The training plan will be modified or training plan cannot be modified. That is a determination that is made with the career planner and the participant based on the circumstances at the time. If you do need help determining whether or not it can or cannot be modified at the point that you're doing this, you can reach out to state merit staff to make that determination and mark the appropriate box. So you have all of the reasons here that you can select. You would select the appropriate reason for the PSR you're entering, and you would put your telephone number, your name and signature, and then you mail this to the participant, and always case note when you're mailing this to the participant, the date that you've mailed it. Okay. So let's look at the first set of potential suspension request instructions. So the first set is for a participant who was issued a waiver from training and they refused suitable employment. So what you're going to do is complete that potential suspension letter, and we have it right here, and you mark this first reason here, of course. And then you will send it to the participant. Of course, case note that sending of the letter to the participant, but you'll do that through the case management entry that you'll be entering. Just keep in mind that the date of this letter needs to match the start date of the entry of the potential suspension request status record. And when you are entering potential suspension request statuses, you are not able to backdate them. So it is from the date of entry. So keep that in mind while you're doing this. And that just shows that these entries are very important, and it's critical that you do timely entries of these records and these statuses for a potential suspension request. So you're going to enter a potential suspension request status record in IWDS. You're going to do that through this list TAA status on the application menu for the trade application for that particular participant. And this is just a participant in the test system. And you will click on that. You'll click Add TAA Status. And then you will select Potential Suspension Request as your status. Your status start date you'll enter will be today, or today's date is the earliest you could enter it, whatever date you're entering it. And then you will pick your Suspension request reason, you do not put an end date in yet. Waiver reason is not applicable, and you would pick the appropriate suspension request reason, and you can add, there's a comment box back here behind this drop down. You can add a dated comment to the comment box about what is going on with that participant, why you're entering this particular item. And the rest of the information does not get completed on this screen because it does not apply to this particular status. And you would click save after you've entered all that information. And here's what it kind of looks like. I didn't put my date in here when I was doing this, so bad me. But always put a date in here at the beginning. So you'll see the status start date. I've put in here and I put they failed to meet 2 benchmarks, training plan cannot be modified because I picked the benchmarks not met, no completion TRA reason. So that's what it looks like when it is complete. And then you will add your case management services in IWDS based on these parameters. Participants that are covered under the petition number 97,999 and below, you will do that on the trade application through your trade case management service record. And I've not put in here the initial entry because you should already have that in the system. So I've only put in these particular instructions for adding additional episodes to that. And to do that, you will do that through the list enrolled services on your application menu for the trade application for the participant. And you'll click on this particular trade case management service record. Click on that name. And then when you get into the record, you will click on add additional episode. And it will take you directly over here to add a case note. So this is where you will add your case note. You can put the date that you mailed the letter. You put your contact date. It will be program will be TAA, your case note category, whatever's applicable there. This is just a sample. There are several drop downs here. Confidential, only mark that yes if it's something related to some confidential information for that participant. You know, because if you mark it confidential, then no one else can see it. The case note subject, just put, you know, exactly what is this for this particular situation. You would put potential suspension request. You know, this is just a sample screen of filling it out, and then provide your case note. It would be as detailed as possible about what you're doing. This is just like if you went to add a case note right here and you were adding a specific case note. That is what this is actually doing. And you're going to save and return when you're done. And then when you do that, you note that the end date does change. We don't want to see multiple trade case management service records. We want to see one where the end date keeps updating as you're adding episodes to it. And on the WIO application for a petition 97,999 or below, there is no entry. If you have a participant who is covered under petition number 98,000 plus, 2021R participant, there is no entry on the trade application. You will do it through the WIOA application. You'll add a new episode to the career planning case management service record. It's done the same way. It's just on the WIOA application list enrolled services. And you'll select this career planning case management service record, and you will add an additional episode. And again, you'll just do this case note screen again, like you would have done on the trade one, and you save and return, and it will update that date. If Illinois is the agent state and you're working with the participant and the liable state is another state, then you must communicate this potential suspension request status to that liable state so they are aware of it. And then IDES will adjudicate it, and following, you know, your entries, what happens is there's a status report that goes to IDES overnight. So they will be made aware of this potential suspension request entry. And then the career planner needs to follow up with IDES regarding that adjudication. There is an IBIS claimant issue list screen. You can look at that for the outcome. If you're not seeing anything, you know, you can contact IDES. I believe Amy or Angela is the one that John Ferry said to contact to get information on whatever the final ruling was for that. And once you get that, then there's some steps to follow. If the PSR is affirmed, it's kind of odd when you think of it, how this is, but that's why we put it in parentheses, because we had to keep it straight ourselves. But if it is affirmed, so the participant did refuse suitable employment, then you're going to go through the process of revoking the waiver, and then you're going to do an IEP modification to do that, and you're going to update the PSR and all of those steps. So what you would do in this case is fill out the IEP modification form, mark waiver change and revocation. You'll of course fill out all the relevant information that's on this form, and the form does look a little bit different now. We've updated it. You're going to do the trade form 003D, the revocation letter, which is right here, and you're going to mark that the waiver's been revoked due to failure to accept suitable employment. This is the letter that you must send to the participant, and they need to sign it. No, not this one, sorry. Oh yes, they do need to sign this and send it back to you, and you would case note that entries, the mailing of it and when they return it. On the actual waiver document itself, the state merit staff approved waiver document, you're going to complete this waiver revocation section. All of these instructions are directly from the waiver revocation instructional document as well. I included them here because they are a part of this process. So you have seen these before. You'll fill in the date it was revoked, the reason, that you've sent the notification to the participant, which is that 003D form. James Wills has a question. What if the customer refuses to sign the letter? As long as you have documented that you have, in the case note, that you have sent the letter to them, and you can note that the participant refused to sign it, that's really all we need. So just, we like to get it back signed by the participant, but obviously sometimes, they won't comply. And then you're going to process the IEP modification. So to do that, you're going to update your potential suspension status record with the information regarding that outcome. And you do that through the list TAA status on the trade application for the participant. And you're going to view the actual potential suspension request status. This will show approval when you're doing, it'll show approved when you're doing it. I just haven't gone in to do the approval on this. I was just showing that you would click view on this, but the actual status record. And you'll enter your status end date, and that will be the date of the IWDS outcome. You will enter a dated comment in your comment box here. So you're going to put your date, and I just put comment describing outcome from IWDS. What was their determination? And you can put in here, revoking waiver, as of such and such date, just you can put a little information about what you're doing, like what other steps you're taking for this. And then you would save. Then you're going to go in and do your IEP status record, because you're doing an IEP modification for this particular thing, because you have to revoke the waiver. So you would view on the IEP status, enter your dated comment in the comment box here. This is not the comment that goes along with this particular type of modification, because this says enrollment and training. So you would put the appropriate comment in here. And then when you save that, that sets it to a pending approval status. And that's because merit staff will have to approve this modification. Then you're going to actually enter the waiver revoked status record in IWDS. And you do that through the list TAA status. You will add a TAA status. And you will select waiver revoked. You're going to put your status start date and your status end date. The start date must match the date of revocation on the revocation letter. And your status end date would be the same date as the status start date. So these two dates will be the same. You're going to enter a comment in the comment box. So this one's the one, 12/30/21, waiver being revoked due to participant failure to accept suitable employment. And you will save it. And then you're going to go through your case management services again. You're going to add your case management services under the same parameters as before, depending on which certification the participant is being served under. And on your case notes for these, you will enter information about the IWDS outcome, you know, the reason for the waiver revocation. You would also put in, you know, this is due to the IDS outcome for the PSR, you know, closing the PSR, you know, just put in any information in that case note that is relevant to what you are actually doing for this particular participant at this time. And let me see. So then if there's another process, depending on if the outcome from IDES is they do not affirm it. Well, you're going to do your uploads of your documents when you're doing the IEP modification. You'll upload that waiver document because you're revoking the waiver, the modification form, the revocation letter, and any other supporting documentation. And to upload, you do list all documents on the application menu for the trade application for the participant. You'll add document, and then you're going to click browse and find the document, and you'll just select it, and then you'll pull this type here. This is the drop down for the type, and you'll pick the document. You can pick each document individually, or you can select 014 IEP, like this is Form 14 Trade IEP, and put all the documents as one document. That is entirely up to you how you do that. It's, you know, up to you. And you'll send your email request to state merit staff. Please note this email subject line. We need you to follow the subject line suggestions, because this helps us determine what we're looking at, and it will help us find emails later. So whatever we have in these instructional documents, each type of thing for email subject lines based on what you're doing, please follow these processes and these instructions on what to put as your subject line. And then what state merit staff will do, I have a note here: when the signed potential suspension letter is returned by the participant, then please case note that when that letter was received back, if they'll sign it. So if the PSR is denied, so the participant did not refuse suitable employment, is what IDES determines, then the process, it's very similar, but you do not have to revoke the waiver at this point. You will do all of the other stuff, but you don't revoke the waiver. You're still going to update your potential suspension request status record through the same process and enter your status end date, and, you know, put your comment in the box and save it, and you're going to do your case management services. So that is all you would have to do in that case. It doesn't require a modification be approved by state merit staff, but you would just update the information in the system related to the IDS outcome. If for some reason the results for that do require an IEP modification for whatever reason, you know, because we couldn't think of any at this point, then just follow those instructions for IEP modifications in previous instructional documents based on whatever type of modification that you need to process. So all of the potential suspension request instructional documents that I've provided go through that same exact process. Provides all of the instructions for exactly how to do each of those entries. I don't need to go through each one of them. If you do have questions when you're working through them, then please contact us. We'll be happy to help. But you know, you guys can read, your adults. It's all pretty much the same process for all of them. It's just there's different steps based on the IDS adjudication or the type of PSR that you're processing. So let's go back. Okay, so let's move on to job search allowance. The job search allowance is for those participants who are trade certified. They could be eligible for this allowance to help them secure suitable employment that's outside the normal commuting area. And in Illinois, the commuting area is 10 miles. Now their job search has to be within the continental United States. So keep that in mind. They can't go, you know, overseas for this. Pre-approval is required. So that means that state merit staff approval must be obtained prior to beginning their job search. The reimbursement amount is limited to 90%, but it's 100% if you're under the 2009 program of the pre-approved job search expenses. So that's transportation, lodging, meals, and incidentals. The maximum reimbursement for job search is $1,250 for that participant for that certification. It is $1,500 if someone is being served under the 2009 program. So keep that in mind. There is information on the form for both of these amounts. And they can get that maximum amount for a single job search, or it can be multiple job searches that are conducted throughout their participants' enrollment through the whole trade program, while they're enrolled with us. So some of the job search activities that we can approve reimbursement for, but they have to be outside the normal commuting areas. So it has to be, outside, it has to be over 10 miles, it has to be over 10 miles away from their residence. So it's for travel to and attendance at job fairs and interviews. So a job interview, or any job fair, travel to and attendance at pre-vocational workshops. If they make an in-person visit with a potential employer who may have job openings for suitable employment, completing a job application in person with a potential employer who may have openings for suitable employment. These seem kind of redundant, but that's what these are from the regs. They can get reimbursed for traveling to the One Stop, a copy center, post office, or some other entity to print, copy, mail, email, or fax a job application, cover letter, or resume. They can get reimbursement for going to a One Stop, a library, community center, or other entity to look at online job matching systems, search for job matches, request referrals, submit applications or resumes, attend workshops, or apply for jobs. And they can get reimbursed for travel expenses for attending a professional association meeting for networking purposes. I know a lot of these are new to a lot of people. You haven't seen these before. Most of what we have processed before has been just for job interviews. But keep in mind, these are available for the participants, but it does have to be pre-approved. We did ask DOL if, because when you're talking about going to a local One Stop or something like this to fax, mail, resumes, look up job matching systems, people may do that like 3 or 4 days a week. We can't approve like a blanket for like a month at a time or a certain period of a time. It has to be for each individual one. So keep that in mind when you're working with participants. If that is a benefit that's available to them. It does require the pre-approval for each one though. So there are eligibility requirements for job searches. One of the things you have to do is complete and submit for approval the application for Job Search Allowance, Trade Form 12. And it has to be submitted before the later of either the 365th day after the date of certification of the petition they're being served under, or the 365th day after the participant's last total separation, or if they've attended training, the 182nd day after the date of completing that approved training. So whatever the later of these 3 potential dates are, that is when they have to complete and submit the application by for approval to be eligible for a job search. They have to be totally separated from their job that's covered under the certification when that job search begins. They have to receive a determination, and that's basically from the state career planner, that they cannot reasonably expect to secure suitable employment in the commuting area. So, whatever documentation you have to support that shows there's no suitable employment in the area, which you have to kind of do that if they're going into training anyway. So you should have basically that documents if they're going into training anyway. They can reasonably expect to obtain in the area of the job search either suitable employment, and we've defined suitable employment before, or employment that pays a wage of at least the 75th percentile of national wages as determined by the National Occupational Employment Wage Estimates and otherwise meets the definition of suitable employment. I've got slides later that shows you how to find this 75th percentile that we're talking about here. This is something new that came out with the regulations when they issued them for that new thing. They also have to receive a determination from the career planner or state that, you know, they have to physically go to that site. You know, that's the only way they can do that job search in place of, you know, potentially doing it online or interviewing, you know, online with the potential employer. And here's how you find that 75th percentile. This is the website you go to, and you will select the appropriate state and occupation for that particular worker, and then you'll view those estimates and locate that 75th percentile. These slides were, this stuff was presented to us by DOL in a presentation, so I just copied their information. So this is just something that they had as a part of their slides. It comes up, I guess, when you do this. And then they had this occupation code, like they were looking up management occupations here, like this 11-0000. And when they pulled that information up, then this is what come up. And then here's the 75th percentile for this particular group of jobs, you know, some management occupations. So it would be like the 74.16 per hour, or annually 154,260. I've not personally been to this website. If anybody has any issues when they're working with it, I mean, let us know. We'll see if we can get some help. But that is how you find that 75th percentile. In addition, the participant cannot have previously received a relocation allowance under that same certification. So you can't get a relocation from the certification and then do a job search, because we've already paid for a relocation based on a new job they've received. They have to complete this job search within 30 calendar days after they leave the commuting area to begin the job search. And completion is defined as they receive a bona fide offer of employment, or has, with the LWIA verification, contacted the employers they plan to contact or to whom they were referred to as a part of the job search. So if they go to an interview, that there's some sort of a confirmation letter from the interview. If they've done one of the other activities, there's some sort of verification provided that they actually did go do and conduct that job search. So before we can approve the final payment for a job search allowance, we must determine that the participant does meet the eligibility requirements, that there's verification they have contacted those employers, they've gone to that job interview, they've actually conducted that particular job search activity that they have been asked to be reimbursed for, or they're asking for reimbursement for. And like we said, pre-approval is required. There's entry of a new IEP service and status records, or you update the current one that's existing if it's already approved. You're going to enter a job search allowance service record, and you're going to enter a new case management service, or add a new episode to an existing case management service record. You're going to enter your case note, and you're going to upload the job search application, the Iep Modification form, and you're going to email state merit staff requesting approval for a job search. So how do we determine the amount of a job search? Well, like we said, it's 90% or 100% if it's a 2009 program of the total costs that are estimated up to the maximum limits that are established by federal travel regulations for some of these. The travel for the actual travel, physical travel by vehicle or whatever, we are governed by the federal travel regulations, and this is you can find them here. They're a very interesting read. I did scan them one day or a couple of days when I was trying to determine, you know, how we figure some of this stuff. And it's for the round trip travel from the participant's home to the job search area. You do not have to deduct the 10 miles each way for the one-way travel, so total of 20 for a job search. They get the total miles from their home to the job search site. They can use other transportation. They are limited to whatever the amount is for personal vehicle usage, unless the travel that they use is less than that. For lodging and meals, if they are going to incur lodging as a part of this job search, it is the lesser of the actual cost of the lodging or meals while they're doing that job search, or 50% of the per diem allowances under the federal travel regulations at TSA.gov. So the lodging and the meals and incidental costs. So it is the lesser of either of those. So they will have to prove when they reconcile the actual costs that were incurred. When you calculate the initial one, you will use the 50% of the per diem allowances. As we said, their total job search allowance under certification cannot exceed these maximums. It's $1,250 for all programs except 2009. For 2009, the max limit is $1,500. If the participant is entitled to be paid by another source for any travel, lodging, or meal expenses for the job search, then whatever job search allowance that we in Illinois will be paying will be reduced by the amount that they will be receiving from that other source. And once they have completed this job search, then they have to do a reconciliation of the job search in order for us to pay the final costs. So they would fill out this. Some of this has changed since I created this, because we have now combined the reconciliation with the actual allowance application. So there is no 12A at this point, it's all Form 12. So keep that in mind. I will update these slides and send a new copy out, or I'll have it posted out there so you'll have a correct set. And what they have to do is they have to provide documentation of all the employers or job fairs they attended, workshops, whatever activity they did. There must be some documentation to support that they did conduct that job search. A job interview letter. We have an interview confirmation letter that they can have filled out when they go. They need to provide receipts for any lodging or transportation expenses that they incurred. So it's documented what the actual costs were. And like we said, proof the interview occurred, which we have a letter, or sometimes they just get something from the employer they interviewed with. If they are advanced any money prior to the job search, then they must, there's a reconciliation of the amount. If they were paid more than what the final costs end up being, they have to return the excess. And if they did not receive all of the money that's due to them, then we will have to pay the difference as a state. So, and once the reconciliation is complete, then state merit staff approval must occur before they're reimbursed any final costs. You do all the same type of things. You're going to update that IEP status record. You're going to enter a job search reconciliation service record, do your case management, case note, upload your forms and the verification, and email state merit staff to request the approval. So let's go look at the job search information. Do I have it open? I don't. Okay, so this is going to be the new job search form that we've created. I hope it's easier to understand and follow than the previous one. So we're just basically calling it trade job search allowance. Has the same kind of information as all of our other forms, the participant information, the eligibility for the job search. So, the application was filed in the you know, the time within the time frames. If it is filed afterwards and you're invoking equitable tolling, then you would mark this box and put the justification. We have added some information here, the certification date, the separation date, and calculate the 365 days from either of those. And did they attend TA approved training? Yes or no? So the last date of training, and then the 182nd day after that last date of training. So that'll help us make sure that we have, this has been filed within the timeframes that are established. And these are all of the eligibility requirements that we went through, you know, that they'll be totally separated. There's no suitable employment within the commuting distance. This 75th percentile here, they can't, you know, do it. They have to physically go. They can't do it by internet. They've not received a relocation allowance, and they're going to complete it within the 30 calendar days after they begin it. So then the next box is to mark which particular job search activity is being requested for reimbursement here. So what date are they going to do this activity? And here's the different activities. If they're doing a job interview, then fill out this information about the position title, the employer name, address, the contact name and phone number at the employer. And then we get into the estimate amount. So what is their departure date and time and return date and time? What mode of transportation are they going to be using? You know, is it a private auto? They're going to do public mass transit, a train, or some other transportation. If you mark other, fill in the box as to what the other transportation is. So for transportation, if they're traveling by personal vehicle, then you're going to do all these calculations here based on the GSA website, and it's based on the location of the job search activity. And you will need a Google Maps printout to attach to this to document those round trip miles that you're putting in here. If they're traveling by another mode of transportation other than a personal auto, then the purchased transportation field is where you would put that cost. So you put their total round trip miles, the federal mileage rate that's in effect. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it went up to 58.5 now as of January 1st. And then this mileage total is a calculation of the round trip miles times the federal mileage rate. And then if there's purchased transportation. So whichever one of these is, you know, whichever one you fill up, then that's what the transportation total would be. For subsistence, if they are going to need lodging as a part of that, then you're going to calculate this based on the GSA rates. So what's the federal lodging rate, the meals and incidentals rate, and this is for the area of the job search activity. How many number of days is it going to be, and calculate it, get those all together. These two times the number of days times this allowable percentage of 50%, and that's what goes here. So what is the total estimated job search? You know, first of all, you need to put in your allowable reimbursement percentage. You know, it's 90% for anybody who's under a program other than the 2009 program. So you would put your percentage either 0.90 or 1 here. And then you will calculate, you're going to add the transportation total, subsistence total together, multiply it times this percentage, and you're going to get your total estimated job search amount here. Keep in mind, it cannot exceed $1,250 or $1,500 if it's the 2009 program. Then we have a question about advance. Are you advancing any money to this participant for this job search? Yes or no? If yes, you can advance up to 60% of this amount. But again, it can't go over these amounts here. So you will put your amount of advance in here. If the participant has had any previous job search they've conducted and been paid for, you would list the dates that they had job search approved and the amounts, and then what is their maximum based on what program they're being served under, and you would put that maximum in this box. What are all of these previous job search payments total up to? You would put that here. So then do a subtraction. What's their maximum allowable minus any previous job search payments? What is the maximum available? And then what is the total estimated job search from here, right here? So just keep in mind that this total estimate can't exceed this remaining job search allowance. Okay. And then you've got your certification page where the participant marks that, yes, they understand they're eligible or understand they're not eligible. They sign it, date it, and the career planner signs and dates it. When the participant completes the job search, then you will go to the next page and do the reconciliation. Participant name, last four of the social, the date. So you need to, this eligibility for the payment part, this is where you mark that they have actually completed this job search. Either they've obtained a bona fide offer of employment, or they have contacted these people they said they're going to contact, employers. Please note, documentation must be provided of either of those. And was the job search completed within 30 days of beginning that job search? And the career planner needs to mark whether they have verified that documentation to ensure that job search activity actually being requested for reimbursement was conducted. And then we go into the reimbursement. So in your departure dates, times, what method of transportation did they use? So this is where you're going to put the actual cost. So what was their actual round trip miles? If they went exactly where they said they were going what you calculated above, you can use the same Google Maps printout. So it doesn't have to be a new one, because sometimes Google Maps will adjust itself within a few seconds even. So it'll put a different one. But if they went the exact places that, that was requested above, you can use that same Google Maps printout. Or if they have some odometer readings or something, you can use that, but it has to be some sort of documentation of that. If they purchased transportation, then that will require receipts. So you'd fill this out, whatever method they took for that transportation to get there. That's your transportation total. For subsistence, you're going to put your actual costs here and your actual meals and incidentals. And then this box is your estimated subsistence total from up above here. So what you calculated on the estimate. And what you're going to do is you're going to add these two together and compare it to this. Whichever one is less, that is what goes here, if they're getting subsistence. So then you're going to calculate what is the remaining job search allowance from number 5 above. That is right here. What was the remaining job search allowance from right here? That is what you'll put here. What were the total job search costs? So that is these two amounts right here, the transportation and subsistence, your actual costs right here. And was there any amount advanced to the participant? So then here's where you would put what reimbursement is going to be paid. So, this remaining job search allowance, make sure they have enough to cover this. So it'll be your total job search costs minus any amount that was advanced. And I've got that right here, total job search costs minus previously advanced to participant. And if this amount right here is greater than this amount, then only this amount here can be paid. If this is less than this amount, then this amount can be paid. I've got a little note to that here. And then you've got your certification for the participant and the career planner to sign. And when you are submitting this for the actual application itself, you really only need to submit these first 3 pages when you're asking for the initial approval, and then you could just submit the last 2 pages when you're asking for the reconciliation approval. Do we have questions? Okay. Okay, looks like the questions have been answered. So that's job search. And I was going to do the letter. Do I have that letter? Here we go. Okay, so I want to show this letter. This is the job interview confirmation letter that can be completed and supported, provided as documentation to support that they did actually go to an interview when they're doing a reconciliation of a job search. So pretty simple to fill out. The person that is doing the interview, would fill out kind of this information, and they would sign this, or this can be filled in. But it does have a statement here that, this individual has applied for reimbursement for the costs associated with this interview. Can you please provide this information and sign their name? And all these forms are out on WorkNet. The job search application reconciliation form is not out there yet. I will get that posted out there soon. Let me go back to. Okay, so now we are going to move on to the relocation part. So relocation is, obviously it's available to trade program participants, that they've been adversely affected, they're under a certification. What this does, it helps pay for relocation expenses for that participant and their family to relocate somewhere outside the normal commuting area, which is 10 miles in Illinois. Has to be within the United States. And they have to have obtained suitable employment for us to be able to pay for the relocation allowance. The participant can only receive one relocation allowance per certification. The maximum reimbursement, again, it's the 90% for all programs except 2009, which is 100%. And it's for the reasonable and necessary expenses of their cost of moving, their household goods, the family, and they get a lump sum that is equivalent to 3 times their participants' average weekly wage. It is up to a maximum of $1,250 for all programs, except for 2009, which is $1,500 maximum. And if you have an instance where a spouse, where both spouses work at the same employer and they both are trade certified, the payment of a relocation allowance is limited to only one of them in the family. And it is, if both of them apply, whoever files their application first is the one that receives the payment. So I don't know if we've had any situations like that, but I know sometimes there are couples who both work at the same employer. So just keep that in mind. If there are 2 in the family, only one of them will get it, and it's whoever files first, and that is based on trade regulations. So the eligibility for relocation allowance, there's an application, it's Form 13. The dates are a little different. It's the 425th, it's the later of one of these 3 dates. The 425th day after the date of certification, 425th day after the date of the participant's last total separation, or the 182nd day after the date of concluding approved training. Again, they have to be totally separated from the job on the it's covered under the certification when the relocation begins. They cannot have received a relocation allowance under that same certification. They have to relocate within the United States, but outside of the commuting area, which is 10 miles. They have to receive a determination very similar to a job search, that there's no reasonable expectation of suitable employment in their commuting area. The 75th percentile thing is here. So it's, suitable employment or that 75th percentile. Now they do have to have an actual bona fide offer of employment in the area of relocation, and there has to be a document for that. We have a letter that can be filled out, or sometimes people will submit a document that's like a letter from the company that they've received the offer from, that welcome to employment, or your hire date is this. And then here again is how to find that 75th percentile. I just kind of included it with relocation as well. It's the same slides. They have to begin that relocation as promptly as possible after the date of certification, but it cannot be later than 182 days after they filed the application for a relocation allowance. So once they file the application, they have 182 days to begin that relocation, or 182 days after the conclusion of approved training program if they receive supplemental assistance. Do not know why this statement is in there. It is in the regulations, but it's 182 days after they file the application or the conclusion of the training program. They have to complete the relocation within a reasonable time, as determined by the federal travel regulations. But consideration must be given to whether there is suitable housing in the area that's available, in the area of relocation that is available to that participant, that they can dispose of their current residence where they're living, or like if they have a participant, the participant itself or a family member is ill for some reason and can't travel right away, or if there's a member of the family that's attending school, then when can they best transfer that person to a school in that area of relocation? So we cannot approve a relocation allowance at the same time that there is a job search allowance being approved. So like if they're in the middle of a job search, we can't approve a relocation while that job search is still active. If they can do a job search and receive the allowance for that, and then say they receive an offer of employment from that employer, then later we can do the relocation, that came as a result of that job search. They successfully got the job. So we can do a relocation later, but it has to be after the job search is completed and reconciled and approved and paid out. So before we can approve any final payment of the relocation allowance, we have to determine the participant met the eligibility requirements for relocation. They submitted their application within the time limits. They began and completed the relocation within time limits, and they did receive suitable employment or an offer of such suitable employment in that area of their intended relocation. We have to verify the suitable employment or the offer with the employer itself. So we have to have some sort of verification that yes, they did get a job. And requesting merit staff approval, same as everything else. You're going to do your application, do a new IEP or update the current one, an Iep Modification. You're going to update the IEP status record. You're going to enter your service record for relocation allowance. You're going to do your case management with a case note. You're going to upload your documents and request merit staff approval. So how do you determine the amount of a relocation? It has there's a little extra stuff with relocation. Travel is still limited, it's 90% for transportation, or if you're under 2009 program, it's 100% of the mileage rate that's in effect under gsa.gov. They get the complete mileage from their old home to their new home. There can be separate transportation paid for travel for family members who are not able to travel with the participant for, whatever reasons, like they can't go there because of health, schooling, a job, or some sort of an economic circumstance. But you have to document why they can't travel with them. Lodging and meals, the reimbursement is the 90% or 100% for 2009 for the participant and the family while in transit, but the cost cannot exceed. Now, so they'll get the lesser of the actual cost of those or the 50% of the per diem allowance based on GSA rates for those days while they're traveling. If there's been a movement of household goods, it's the same percentage reimbursement, the 90% or 100% for 2009 for the movement of those household goods and personal effects. It has to be by the most economical commercial carrier that, to get it there, rental truck, a moving company. They can move a house, trailer, or mobile home if necessary. They can get reimbursed for costs of temporary storage of your household goods if that's necessary. And that can be either at your current location that they live or at the relocation site. But it's only for up to 60 days. If they move a house, trailer, or mobile home, there are specific requirements. They have to get an estimate of the moving cost. They can insure the goods for the actual value or $40,000, whichever is less. If the state can get it more economically, then we can work with the commercial carrier or the mover directly. I don't know if we can do it any more economical. So like this is a career planner could do that. And then there is a maximum net weight of the household goods that are relocated, and they can't exceed those set by the federal travel regulations. I don't know exactly what those are off the top of my head. If you have a situation like this, you can always reach out to us and we'll work through it. As a part of the relocation, that participant does receive a lump sum that's equivalent to 3 times the participant's average weekly wage. Again, the whole relocation cannot exceed $1,250 or $1,500 if it's a 2009 program. And if they're eligible to receive any kind of reimbursement from any other source, then we have to deduct that amount from the relocation allowance that we will pay. And in no case may a travel allowance be paid for the participant for a family member more than once for a single relocation. So payment of a relocation allowance. If that participant makes a timely application and is covered under certification and otherwise they're eligible for this, then we must make payment as promptly as possible. The regulations state that we must pay the allowance computed no earlier than 10 days in advance of and no later than at the time of the participant's scheduled departure to begin the relocation. That is different than the way we have operated before. So I want to highlight that we, according to the regulations, we are required to pay relocation allowances that are calculated, as the original estimate 10 days in advance of, but no later than at the time they're leaving to begin that relocation. So keep that in mind. So the timing is important there because we will have to approve it and allow you time to advance that money to that participant before that relocation begins. Now they do still have to do a reconciliation. So after they complete that relocation, then they must certify their expenses that were, incurred as a part of that. They have to provide receipts, and there's a relocation reconciliation that needs to be completed. And it's, they still have to do it. So, and there's a document to fill out for it. But they complete the reconciliation, a relocation, when the participant and the family, if any, are going with them, if there's any family, along with household goods and personal effects, are delivered to the new residence in the area of relocation or to temporary storage. Or if the participant moves no household goods and personal effects, then a participant completes the relocation when the participant and family, if any, arrive in the area of relocation and establish a residence in the new area. So completion of the reconciliation is required. If the advance was given, then the adjustment will need to be made. Either participant returns any excess that was given to them over what is calculated as the final actual costs that are eligible for reimbursement, or the state must make any payment available to them for any costs that were not reimbursed that they did incur. And it does this requires process Iep modification for the approval of the reconciliation. Same thing, you're going to update your Iep status record, fill out your form 14A, do your case management, case note, enter your relocation reconciliation service record, upload the reconciliation form and receipts, an email state merit staff for approval. So like I said, all the forms are in ePolicy or on WorkNet. And I want to go to now the current form that we are using for relocation. It is undergoing an update as we speak. I apologize. I just have not been able to get that particular form completely updated yet. I'm trying to get it pulled up here. Okay, there it is. So it is still in its current form, but in the next couple of weeks, I plan to get it updated, hopefully make it easier. Of course, you've got your participant information, their relocation information. This is the determination. I know there's a couple of things we need to change in here. You know, and this is, they have to have 2 actual moving estimates total, you know, 2 different estimates for the move. So estimate 1, you know, what's the travel allowance? What other kind of moving allowances are there? You know, if they're moving transportation of household goods, you know, who's doing it? And then what is the estimated request? What's the total estimated travel and moving expenses? Is there any total being direct billed or prepaid? What's the, and then deduct any employer contributions that are being made to as a part of that move, if anybody's helping pay that, the average wage. So what would be the required lump sum payout? And then what is your total for that moving estimate 1? And moving estimate 2 is the same thing, all the same information. And then here they sign at the top, like they've been determined, you know, that they're eligible. But like I said, this form is not going to stay the way it is. But if you do have a relocation between now and the time we update the form, then you'll need to use this form. But like I'm working on it currently. It is a work in progress, but we will let you know when it's available. And if we need to have a short little webinar or something to go through the form, if you'd like that, we can do that. So when we do send it out, let us know if you do want that, and we'll be glad to walk through the form with you. And then there is the reconciliation form. Hopefully I can put the both forms together like I did for the other, like I did for the job search. But here is the current reconciliation of a trade relocation. You've got your participant information, their relocation information, and this is like the actual expense detail showing, you know, what was actually incurred for the expenses. What is the total expenses allowable? Was there anything prepaid or direct billed? So what's that subtotal? Is there any employer contributions towards that? What's your approved total? And then how much was advanced to the customer? So what's owed or due to the customer, and then what was the lump sum advance provided? And it directs you to item numbers on the actual application as well. So then what is actually due to the customer, or what was the total reconciliation here? Customer signs it and the career planner signs it. You can see these forms are a little older because we still have the director signature on here. We still refer to these people as customers, but this will change as well. We will let you know when it's all updated, but I just wanted to at least show it to you that this is the reconciliation document for a relocation. I think I have. And if they don't have a specific document from the actual new employer, then this document can be completed by the participant can have this completed to show that they did get new employment. And the employer would sign it and date it and put the date of hire, their wage, their phone number, and that information. Most generally, people will have some sort of a letter from the employer saying, welcome to employment at our, our organization, company. So they usually will generally include that as a part of what they're doing as a documentation. So like I said, here's the, oh, I guess I better share my screen, hadn't I? So again, all the forms that we've gone over, they are on, there's a link to them on ePolicy, and they are on WorkNet. Always, especially now with all this training we've done, check this site for the latest forms. We have started putting the date at the end of the form name to give you a better reference of when the, what's the most recent version of the form in case you have a copy at your desk. I know we just sent out the 14A yesterday. So there's a new version. If you have one already started that you signed prior to yesterday, then go ahead and use that one for any modifications. But any modification that you begin, if you haven't done the 14A yet and had it signed, then use the new form that's out on WorkNet when you submit your modification. So here's some helpful websites. Of course, there's the trade form site again, Department of Labor, IWDS. Most of you know how to get into that. You probably have a icon on your desktop. Here's the GSA.gov site. And this Workforce GPS has a lot of good Trade 101 resources for anybody who wants to get a little more information. And here's your DCEO trade contacts. Of course, Susan, myself, and Lori. Susan and myself are the main trade staff people. Lori is our backup and will assist us when we need it. Crystal does our trade grants. So she's the person you would talk to about any grant issues. But when you email people, email Susan, myself, and Lori for any kind of approvals that you are asking for, because that way, in case Susan and I are out, which has happened at times, and it does happen every Monday from, at a certain point, because we both have every other Monday off, Susan and I, one of us does, and one of us leaves early the other Monday. So Lori can help us if there's any approvals that need to be handled while we're gone. But this ensures that you get a quick response to your email in case we're working on some other project, which has happened lately, and somebody else can fill in. These are the IDES trade unit contacts. This is not all of the trade unit staff at IDES. They do have additional staff, but these are the main contacts that they have. This is their phone number and their email addresses. And then we only have currently scheduled 2 more training sessions. Lucky you. So January 11th, we are going to go through credential and measurable skills gains and exiting participants. This is a Tuesday. This is next Tuesday. And I believe, unless, something else happens with their schedule, but Mark Burgess and Paula Berry will be on this training session. Not necessarily presenting, but they will be available for questions unless things change, unless they decide they want to present. But they are going to be available during that call to answer specific questions related to this, because they are our performance folks and they are the most well-versed in this. And then January 13th, we are going to cover the taper, GRS, appeals, fraud, overpayments, and monitoring. It looks like it's very extensive, but it won't be as extensive as you probably think. The appeals, fraud, and overpayments are very short sections. We will be sending out, and you can actually, if you would, help us notify your fiscal staff in your area of this upcoming training on January 13th. I'm going to get the notification sent out to them today for this particular training. It would be very good for the fiscal staff in your organization to attend this one, especially this piece on the taper and GRS. Because it directly relates to things that they will be doing. If there's additional training that is needed, let us know, or if you would like something covered that we haven't covered yet, or some additional training on a specific topic, we'll be glad to help you out with whatever's needed. Here is where the training recordings and presentations and materials are going to be posted. please, I'm cautioning you, if there's any forms that are posted out there, which we do, we've been posting some forms, do not rely on those copies of the forms to be the source that you use when you're doing the forms for submitting for approvals. Those were just as guidelines when we were presenting. Always go to the WorkNet site to get the most recent form. I don't use the ones that are posted here because they may not be the current version. So is there any other questions? No other questions. Wow.
I don't believe so.
All right, well, great. Well, see, I'm done early today and I didn't talk that fast. I mean, I hope it was helpful. I hope all of these trainings are helpful. I've heard some good feedback from people that they have gained information from these and that they're very helpful. And we will get all of the materials posted to the WorkNet site. We will also let you know when we have the job search form uploaded to WorkNet and when the relocation form is updated and posted as well. And we will get the chat posted for any trainings that we're behind on. I don't know if we've got them posted yet for the 12th, 14th, and the 16th of December yet. I will double check that today and get those posted if necessary. But all right, if not, then I guess we will see you on Tuesday for the second to the last training.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.